Hi, Dr. Phil, Victor Naraki, and I'd like you to make me a star in my own life. I have been smiling for 53 years, and which basically means I was smiling in the womb. And anyone who knows me would probably say I was a happy person. But that's really a facade. The only times that I've been truly happy is when I've been creative, when I've been around creative people or acknowledged as being creative. You know, you could call me the handsomest, sexiest, smartest, slimmest man you've ever met. And I would say, you don't get out much, do you? But it also wouldn't have that much of an effect on me, because the most important thing for me to hear is that I was creative. In second grade, I can remember when my teacher told my mother that I was creative. I can remember where I was sitting in the house, and my mother came back and said that. And I can remember in fifth grade when we were given a creative writing assignment. This is 40 years ago, and I can remember the picture that they gave me to write about. And I can remember writing with great enthusiasm I never showed in school before. I can remember researching for the little creative writing assignment. I can remember that. And I can remember going to the teacher about a week later, anxiously to find out what the response was. And I can remember her saying to me, "Oh, Victor, we don't grade those. That's just a creative writing assignment." The word "just" hit me like a cinder block. And I walked back to my desk, and I looked up at the clock, and I waited for the day to end. And all through high school, I really felt that I was trying to be creative, and I was doing things that were very creative, investing all my time into creative things. So when I went to college, I had complete direction. And the second day, I completely lost it. I was interning in TV and majoring in something else. So when I got out of college, I was completely unemployable. And now you will be entertained by my employment history, and I will speed through the parts that are dull, boring, or too sad to really go into. He's the biggest bastard in the business. Right into the toilet. I think that working for that gentleman lowered my standards so much. The next job I had was basically with a ridiculous company, and I was yelled at on the very first day. Thank you very much. The next job I went to, it was with an advertising agency, and they were presenting this new campaign to their new client. And I voiced my opinion to the president of the company, and I said, "Hey, this ain't gonna fly. This looks exactly like the competition's ad." And I was chased around a drafting table by a vicious little art director, pointing her bony finger at me and telling me that I was worthless, that I should keep my mouth shut, that I knew nothing, and I was a loser. The fact that I was right, she lasted 3 weeks. I lasted 3 more months. The company didn't make it 3 more years. Following which, I went to another company, and they had a new advertising campaign, and what do you know it? I spoke up again. And I was right. And the day that the network said they will not run this ad and they had wasted $500,000, I was fired. So now I'm shell-shocked. So I spent 8 years working in a company that was a crutch. Now I'm at the point where I'm 38 years old. Never had a good job, never worked with nice people. In fact, anytime anybody ever complained about my bosses, I'd always say, he's the biggest bastard in the business. I worked with worse. My standards were so low, I was willing to accept anything. And a friend of mine said to me, Victor, as I was commiserating with her, she said, Victor, pray to your angels. Yeah, right. But when you got nothing else, so that night I prayed. And I remember laying on my bed crying and tears in my eyes, and my cats were curled up next to me. And I said, if I could just get a job in sales training where I was traveling, presenting a product, working with a product that I could really understand and grab, and working with nice people. And I fell asleep, and the next day I was walking up the stairs to my apartment, and I could barely stand up straight. And I could remember getting to the third step and hearing or feeling on this side of my head, look in the LA Times. And I remember it because I actually verbally responded. And I walked up 4 more steps, and again I got this message. And this time I turned and I said, okay. And I turned around, went to the newsstand, got the LA Times, opened it up, saw the job product trainer, spent all day submitting that resume with a great cover letter, went on the interview, and within a few days, I had the job. Presenting products, traveling, and working with some of the nicest people I've ever worked with. And I spent the next 11 to 12 years working as a sales trainer. And you have ways of answering questions that are more creative, but it wasn't ever what I wanted to do. And with the economic downturn, of course, I was unemployed. Trainers are the first to go. And I wasn't surprised, though. My current company made some statements that made me concerned that my job was in jeopardy. What they said was, oh, don't be concerned, your job's not in jeopardy. But it never was what I wanted to do. And now I'm in real estate. And I enjoy that only because I do get to talk to people, work with them, answer needs, and my customers have gotten some really good deals. But it's not what I want to do. It's not my life dream. My life dream is to be creative, to be recognized as being creative. So, over the years, I have written some scripts. I did get to certain levels, but I always was a day late and $1 short. I would present things through friends only to see lines from my script get utilized, but me never getting a return phone call. I had Dancing Raisins 5 years before the California Raisins, okay? Claymation Raisins 5 years before. And I had all these little just glimpses of maybe. And every every single one turned out to be a no. One of the great highlights recently was that I was featured in the New York Times for my vacation rental home, where on the first page of the travel section they had my picture and highlighted my creative rooms. I loved that. But the company that helped me get that, which I did not work for, introduced on their Facebook page their new Super Bowl ad. Okay, you know where this is going. And I wrote to the president. And I figured, hey, at least this time they can't fire me, when I wrote to them and told them that they would be humiliated. And they were. But I also told them I have some ideas, and they jumped at the opportunity to use it. And I signed away my rights, I signed away any profits, I made nothing for it. Why would I do this? Because I was so anxious to be recognized as being creative. And they took the idea and made it into garbage, an embarrassment. And I was so desperate that I sold my baby into prostitution. That's how important it was to be recognized as being creative, that I was willing to give it away for free. Now, I wish I can jump into H.G. Wells' time machine and go back to high school. But I can't, and I won't. So forget about it. But I might like to see if there's a way to recapture what could have been using life experiences that I've had. And if there's any way that I could find the opportunity to really be smiling and not have it be a facade. Dr. Phil, by making me a star in my own life, I think you could do it.